Welcome to Christian Warrior Training's Crime Watch, where we are going to talk about all the crime that occurred this week at churches. There's a lot of violence this week. If you want to stick around, we're going to talk about some very bad things that have happened at churches over the past week. The purpose is so that you can learn about what's going on around the country and around the world and how you can prevent something like this from happening at your church. So we'll always talk about the story. We'll always end that particular story with what you can do to prevent it at your church so you can keep your congregation a little safer every day. Now, I haven't done this in a couple of months. Let me know if this newscast helps you or doesn't help you. Let me know in the comments. I'm debating whether I should keep doing it or not. You let me know. I do it for you. All right. This all comes from the crime bulletin that I do every week. This week, the big things that occurred are the 2 shootings and ISIS threats. ISIS calling for the killing of Christians around the world. This is happening about once a month, and people are following through with that. We've had 3 lone wolf attacks, 3 lone wolves that have heard this call from ISIS and that have committed violent crimes at churches around America. So let's talk about this first. I don't have links for these particular stories because I'm getting them from intelligence bulletins from the government. I don't want to let anybody know my source for where I'm getting these because I don't want my source in the government to get in trouble because the government apparently doesn't want you to know about this stuff. I don't know. All right. So look, the first one is going to be the terror update. This again comes from christianwarriortraining.com. You can sign up for the newsletter there. Islamic State had called for attacks on churches and Christians around the world. Here is the original sheet that they sent out. You're probably not going to be able to find this on the open web. They are being distributed on Telegram and other social media outputs that ISIS followers listen to. And basically what they are saying is that they want all their followers to attack Christians and Jews all around the world. We should be worried about that because people are following through with what they're saying. So basically what you can expect as a church congregation is that lone wolves, including some disturbed teenagers in your church, are going to hear this call and they're going to follow through with it with an active shooter. Or the thing that's been picking up steam lately is vehicle ramming incidents. So you should just be prepared for something like that. The chances of this happening at your church are pretty minimal, but it's not zero. You're more likely to have a medical incident. You're more likely to have a burglary or a vandalism or some kind of a domestic violence or something like that. Those are the high probability issues in your church that really are like 25-75, like 25% against 75% happening at your church. So just be aware of it. They also put out more propaganda from ISIS and Al-Qaeda that specifically called Christians enemies of Islam. They call for a religious war, not just against governments, but against civilians, against you. They said that churches were named alongside along synagogues and secular governments as legitimate military targets. So just you as a Christian are a legitimate military target from ISIS. And it framed attacks on churches as religious obligations. So you as a Muslim are required to attack Christians and Jews around the world. And if you don't, you're not a good Muslim. You just want to remember that, and again, you can see right here on the newsletter, I'll always put down information I think is important for you, my opinion. And here, I'm just saying that it's spiritual warfare that's turned physical against us. Church safety teams have to approach your mission with the understanding that they are protecting a congregation that's already declared as a target by enemies of the faith. All right, let's go ahead and go on with some of the news that we're seeing around the country right now. So although this particular incident that we're going to talk about now, it was not targeting a church. It was a man that was in the Michigan Army National Guard. He was a soldier that is a lone wolf attacker. He heard ISIS's call and he gathered a group of people to attack a military base in Michigan. Unfortunately for him, the people that he hired to come help him were all undercover agents. We should remember that although he was going to do a kinetic attack, meaning a shooting attack against this facility, we should remember that churches are named targets by Al-Qaeda and ISIS. So you should look at these incidents and just realize that they're coming for you, that although military base, they want to attack you next. Next, we got a man accused in a shooting at an Omaha church, and he appeared in court This was at Divine Shepherd Lutheran Church in Omaha, Nebraska. Now, the shooting at Divine Shepherd Lutheran Church happened on the night of May 10th in 2025 this year, just a couple weeks or just a week ago. It left 2 individuals injured during a private event attended by about 100 people. Now, the suspect is a 33-year-old man. He's been charged with first-degree assault and use of a weapon to commit a felony after admitting to intentionally shooting his cousin due to a long-standing personal conflict. Now, one victim sustained a gunshot wound to the arm, while another was grazed on the hand. The shooting took place in the church gym, and the suspect was released on a $100,000 bail. After posting bond, he is scheduled to appear in court on June 16th. Now, look, I know people like renting out their space to make money for the church, but you really have to do your research on who's coming and whether you want those people in your church or not. A lot of churches, I'm not saying this is what happened in this particular church, but a lot of churches don't vet the people that are renting their space. So I think it's very important for you to just do a quick background check on the people that want to rent your church. Okay, next up, we got a shooting and a stabbing at a funeral in a Hartford church. Now, this violent incident during that funeral service happened at Gospel Lighthouse Church in Hartford, Connecticut on May 9th. Now, it left 3 people injured and has prompted a community vigil calling for peace. Now, according to police, a 30-year-old man was arrested after he allegedly punched a 65-year-old woman during an argument, then fired a gun inside the crowded church, which had about 150 people. Now, the woman suffered serious injuries, and a 37-year-old woman was grazed by a bullet. A 32-year-old man was stabbed twice in the back. It sounds like quite the melee. Now, authorities are still searching for the individual responsible for the stabbing. The event has raised concerns about rising violence as summer approaches. Now, in response, community members and anti-violence groups, including Mothers United Against Violence, organized a vigil outside the church on May 13th to advocate for peace and public safety. Now, when your church hosts a funeral, you need to think about a risk assessment. Now, criminals and gang members, they're church members just like you are. If the person being mourned has prior criminal history and has a gang or drug affiliation, you should have security on hand and a plan to deal with troublemakers. Now, another issue is that rivals know where the entire criminal enterprise is going to be. They're going to be at that funeral. Now, I was a gang team sergeant. When we had a gang funeral, the gang team all attended to keep the peace. That just gives you an idea of how much violence comes from these funerals. In fact, I remember one funeral that we overwatched. I was actually in charge of a sniper team. We deployed snipers around the funeral because of the violence that we thought was going to come to that particular funeral. You guys don't want this stuff at your churches. So look, they have to have a funeral. That's fine. You just want to make sure you have security and rules in place so that people violate those rules. You have a plan to deal with it so you can protect the people and the church. Next up, we got a man with a gun at a Kettering, Ohio Catholic school and a church. Now, a brief lockdown was enacted Friday morning at St. Charles School, Archbishop Alter High School, and St. Charles Borromeo Church in Kettering, Ohio, following a report of an armed man in a pickup truck. Now, police responded shortly after 11 a.m. when staff at St. Charles School received a call about a possible male suspect with a gun in the parking lot. Now, as a precaution, both schools and the church were locked down. And some families attending a senior awards ceremony at Alter High School were brought back inside. Now, law enforcement searched the area and buildings, ultimately finding no individual or vehicle matching the description that was given. Now, the lockdown was lifted after the scene was cleared. Now, look, when you receive a call of this type of a threat, take all the children to a part of the church or classrooms where they can be shielded from gunfire. Now, just bring them inside isn't enough. I want you to pre-plan and think, if this happens in my church, where are we going to take the kids? Lock all the doors and keep people away from windows. You want to post guards, whether they're armed or not, at all entrances to stop any unauthorized access. If that man with a gun decides to come into the school, and I don't care if you're armed or not, you're going to have to take that person on, or a lot of people are going to die. And I get that some churches don't have armed people, and I'm okay with that. It's your choice, but you're going to have to stop that armed man. So most attackers, when they are attacked physically, are actually going to stop their attack. Now, if you get shot, don't worry. I remember a statistic in a tactical medic class that I attended was if only 5% of people that get shot actually die. So you're good to go. Just keep fighting and stop that person. If you don't have a gun, then take his. Get it from him. Fight him in some way. Get it from him. Take it and then shoot him if it's appropriate. It may not always be appropriate, but you'll catch my drift. Now, look, You want to lift that lockdown only after you've talked to the police and they give you the all clear. It's important to tell them that you have locked down your schools and your church so that they can work with you. And they know, they'll tell the officers on scene that you're locked down. That way the officer knows, like, hey, I think this is a point where everybody can stop hiding and let them come on out. All right, next up, we got chaos that erupts at a carnival in Belmar, New Jersey. Now, this happened on May 10th at an annual church event in Belmar, and it was shut down early after large groups of unsupervised teens caused widespread disruption and property damage. Now, according to the Belmar police, over 400 youths gathered at the church fundraiser, eventually overwhelming the event and spilling into nearby neighborhoods. Now, fights broke out. Several businesses were forced to close for safety, and reports of gunshots prompted further concern, though no evidence of firearms was found. Now, during the unrest, an elderly woman suffered a head injury and a boy was hit by a car, both requiring medical attention. Now, multiple properties sustained damage and 3 juveniles were arrested for disorderly conduct, criminal mischief, and simple assault. The incident remains under investigation. Now, look, this is happening more frequently. If you have been reading this bulletin for the last year, this is at least the 5th such incident at a church carnival. It's usually at a Catholic church carnival. Now, proper prior planning is going to prevent these issues as well as having security on site. So having security is mandatory. And when you have an event like this, whether it's in-house or an outside service, you need a plan on dealing with these crowds as well as a plan if you have gang members or other undesirables that show up and start any kind of chaos. Next up, we got a traffic collision with multiple people injured at a church in Illinois. Now, authorities are investigating an incident in which a vehicle drove into the Episcopal Church of the Transfiguration in Palos Park on Friday afternoon. Now, the crash occurred at the intersection of 123rd and 86, leaving a large hole in the church's structure. And you can see that. I mean, that's a decent crash right there. Now, 3 children were injured and transported to Christ Hospital in Oak Lawn, along with the driver and church staff member. Officials believe the driver experienced a medical emergency just before the crash. None of the injuries were reported to be life-threatening. Additionally, 2 police officers were hospitalized due to smoke inhalation sustained while clearing debris at the scene. Churches have to look at where vehicles can enter their church and harm your congregation, whether it's intentional or by accident. Now, these incidents are preventable, all of it. This is preventable. Now, while visiting one of the largest churches in Idaho, I visited the children's area. Now, the classroom wall was all glass and faced the parking lot. Now, I easily could have driven a 1-ton truck through the glass and killed every child in that room, intentionally or unintentionally. All of the church's classrooms faced the parking lot. So theoretically, I could do it to all classrooms before the police arrived. Now, even an accident in the lot could kill these children. So stop worrying about aesthetics and start worrying about your people. I hear from churches all the time, the reason why they don't put up bollards or anything like that to stop traffic from hitting the building is because it doesn't look friendly. We're past that, okay? We have accidents, plus we have an increase in ramming incidents around the world. Look at New Orleans in Louisiana. Just this past New Year's. You need to stop worrying about aesthetics. You can still make things look nice, like this church in Idaho. I know you guys are watching. You guys follow me. I pray that you guys fix that. I think easily you can do metal bollards that line that area and nobody would think twice about it because we know about it. Like, we know that these things are done. We know that people are doing it to prevent any kind of a crash. I don't think there should be any glass in a classroom for kids because you could just shoot through the glass too. And then get the children. I don't understand that part. But if your church already has that glass area, there are things that you can do to make sure that the children are safe. It is your responsibility. The Bible even states that we're supposed to protect the children in our congregation. I don't understand why you're not doing it. All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox. That bothers me. Very rarely do I have weather incidents in the newsletter. But this one bothered me. Now, we had, just the other day, we had deadly storms that killed 23 people across the Midwest and the South, but it included a church fatality in St. Louis. Now, severe weather swept across the Midwest and South and has left at least 23 people dead with 14 fatalities in Kentucky alone. Now, a likely tornado struck Laurel County, Kentucky, causing major damage in the Sunshine Hills neighborhood and prompting widespread rescue efforts in Missouri. Storms devastated parts of St. Louis, where 5 deaths were reported and over 5,000 homes impacted. Among the fatalities was one person who died when part of the Centennial Christian Church in St. Louis collapsed during the storm. Now, 2 others at the church were injured as well. Man, my heart goes out to them. I do look at, for those of you that are on the list of the most joint regional intelligence centers that the government runs, the fusion centers will include churches into their distribution network. In fact, I'm going to let you guys know right now about a group that I joined. Let me find them here real quick. It's called FB-ISAO. It's a faith-based information sharing. I can't remember what the AO stands for. It costs about $200 a year, but it is wonderful. It has great information. They put out FEMA alerts every day. And I think all of us need to realize that weather impacts our churches. They put out an alert that day that I got on FB-ISAO. And I saw that there was going to be severe weather. And I was wondering about churches. When you get those FEMA alerts that there is bad weather coming, you should start thinking about what you can do to protect your people if there's a tornado at the church, bad weather, something like that, because we do have to protect our people. All right, on to the part that I hate. I hate this part. Sex crimes. You are more likely to have your pastor molest a child than you are to have an active shooter. I just want to make that clear. We have 3 separate sex crimes to talk about this week. You've only had 2 shootings at churches this week. There are always more sex crimes than any kind of a violent incident at churches in America. That should tell you that if you're not doing background checks and other things to protect your children, that's the most likely thing to occur more than an active shooter. But I'll see churches invest all sorts of time on an active shooter and nothing to protect themselves from kids. Even car rammings, you're more likely to have a child molestation case. That bothers me so much. All right, we're on to Raleigh, where a children's pastor was arrested for child exploitation. Now, a children's ministry pastor at First Korean Baptist Church of Raleigh's English ministry in Wake Forest, North Carolina, was arrested on May 6 on charges of distributing child sexual abuse material. Now, the suspect is a 30-year-old man. He was charged with second-degree sexual exploitation of a minor after investigators allege he shared a video via instant messaging that depicted the abuse of a girl believed to be between the ages of 9 and 12 years old. The arrest was made by the Wake Forest Police Department in coordination with the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. ICAC units are wonderful. That ICAC is the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. Those people have such a tremendous amount of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, from looking at these images, dealing with these perverts. You're doing the Lord's work by arresting these people and getting them in custody, but I know it's taking a toll on you. I thank you for all your hard work. How are you going to prevent this? Look, man, you can do a background check and you can do all sorts of other things to keep these people out. But if they've never been arrested and everybody thinks he's a great person, which most people do, then there's not a lot you can do to prevent them from coming into the church. But what you can do is have strong safety measures, like no child is ever left alone with clergy or any other staff. Even your pastor should not be meeting children alone by themselves. And I know there are churches that do that. I know there's one large denomination in America where the pastor will meet with children by themselves to talk about sex education. And I don't understand why they're by themselves. That denomination is facing it's not the Catholics. It's a huge denomination. They've got a huge lawsuit going right now against them. All of this stuff is preventable. All of it. All right, next up, a New Jersey pastor was indicted for sex trafficking and forced labor at a church. Now, I use the term pastor lightly. I'm not sure this place is actually a church. And this is a federal case. Now, the federal prosecutors have indicted the self-proclaimed pastor and founder of Jesus is Lord by the Holy Ghost Church in Orange, New Jersey, and the suspect's wife for operating a years-long forced labor and sexual abuse scheme under the guise of religious leadership. Now, Treva Edwards, 60, allegedly used coercion and spiritual threats to control church members between 2011 and 2020. Now, they subjected them to unpaid labor and, in one case, repeated sexual abuse that led to a pregnancy, after which he instructed the victim to get an abortion. Very Christian-like. Prosecutors say he and his wife, Christine Edwards, forced members to clean and repair properties for their personal gain, deprived them of food and sleep, and discouraged medical care. Now, Treva Edwards faces multiple federal charges, including sex trafficking by force, fraud, and coercion, which carries a minimum sentence of 15 years up to life if convicted. I love federal charges. Man, you get some deep time out of that. Okay, I don't really think these people were a true church. I They certainly aren't acting like Christians. I think they're self-proclaimed, but it does affect our community, so we should keep an eye on it. All right, next up, we're going to go to Brooklyn, New York, where a Catholic church is cooperating with the NYPD in a child sexual assault investigation. Now, a Catholic church in Brooklyn in the NYPD is in an active investigation of allegations of child sexual assault that reportedly occurred at a church rectory. Now, according to Shore News Network, the incident is said to have taken place at a parish facility with the Diocese of Brooklyn, and church officials have confirmed they are assisting law enforcement as the case unfolds. Now, details about the suspect, the victim, and the exact timeline have not been released. Now, look, the diocese is doing a good job here. They're emphasizing its commitment to transparency and cooperation in cases involving abuse allegations. They have learned from their mistakes, and they're trying to fix that. This, to me, reading between the lines, sounds like there was somebody in the church that came in and took advantage of a minor that was by themselves at the church. I don't have anything to show that, just my experience as a 30-year cop. That's what it sounds like. We go back to strong policy of never letting a child be by themselves, alone with an adult, unless it's the parent, and all children are under supervision, no matter what, by their parents or church staff. All right, let's get out of all that achy stuff. Let's move on to arsons. Now, Friday Day Ministry Churches in West Virginia was targeted in an arson attack, and it's being investigated after a series of intentionally set fires happened at the church. This happened on May 14th. Firefighters responded to a small blaze in a shed attached to the church around 12:10 in the afternoon. Later that afternoon, additional fires were discovered burning at multiple entry points of the main church building and its adjacent fellowship hall. Now, the West Virginia State Fire Marshal's Office has confirmed that both incidents were acts of arson and has identified preliminary leads on potential suspects. Investigators are actively pursuing these leads and have requested the public's assistance through the state's arson tip line. This is just my weekly reminder to you that you need a burglar and a fire alarm and a 4K video system at your church. Hands down, this is the single best security measure for any church. The most likely thing to happen at your church, it easily is going to be property crimes, vandalism, or burglaries. Next up, the most likely event is going to be those child molestation cases, followed by arsons. In which case now, for the arsons and for those property crimes, those alarms are going to go a long way. The 4K video system helps us identify these people. Look, I worked in a bigger city, and we would still see good 4K video of a suspect, and we know exactly who that is. Let's go get them right now. That was a very frequent thing. Somebody in the department will recognize that guy. We've got another one. It was an arson and a burglary that destroyed a community center at Ector County Church. Now, authorities in Ector County, Texas, are investigating a case of first-degree arson following a fire that severely damaged Second Chance Fellowship Church in Odessa during the early mornings of May 9th. According to the Ector County Sheriff's Office and Odessa Fire Rescue, an unknown individual burglarized the church, stealing a trailer along with musical instruments and equipment before intentionally setting a fire using gasoline inside of a closet. Now, the blaze destroyed a large portion of the community center and sanctuary, collapsing parts of the roof and damaging furniture, windows, and appliances. Now, despite this destruction, a Bible remained untouched. We know why, though, right? The church leaders and members are devastated, obviously, by the malicious intent behind the act, and they're planning to rebuild and have temporarily relocated their Sunday services. Again, a burglar alarm and a fire alarm are the best things you can do. And I'll give you an example. The burglar alarm is going to go off, and it may be a while before they send a cop. But that fire alarm, when the fire alarm goes off right after that, that dispatcher that receives the call is going to see, I just got a burglar alarm and now a fire alarm. Somebody probably went in there and started a fire, and now they're going to elevate that call up to the top of the list. You're going to get cops, firefighters, everybody, and it just helps suppress the damage. And I can tell you, I've responded to fire alarms after a burglar alarm and have caught the suspects nearby. Just my 2 cents. Okay, next up, a woman was caught with meth after breaking into a South Carolina church. Now, she broke into this church after deputies responded to a burglar alarm. Win for the burglar alarm at the Spiritual Church of God near George Albert Lake. The incident occurred last month when officers discovered a 38-year-old woman inside the church during their search of the premises. Now, according to authorities, that began as a break-in investigation. It turned into a drug bust after deputies found approximately 10 grams of meth in her possession. Look, 10 grams of meth is pretty decent. I would do a sales case on that. Deputies, if you're watching, I teach counter narcotics as a living. In fact, I've done it in your state before multiple times. Now, look, a dosage unit, to give you an idea of how much 10 grams is, a dosage unit is 1/10 of a gram. Okay. Now, I know some people use more, some people use less, but 1/10 of a gram is the average dose of methamphetamine. So that means for each gram of meth, you have 10 doses. So right there, times 10 grams, you've got about 100 doses. That's a lot. And that's how I explain it for the cops that are watching. That's how I explain in my report, how it sales alone without having anything else. That's up to you if you want to try that. I think it works very well for me. I think in North Carolina, I don't know if or South Carolina, I don't know if she's getting any good time out of that. I hope she does. She probably broke into the church because she's a tweaker. She's just tweaking out and broke into the church. That's what they do. It's just tweakers doing tweaker things. All right, next up, we got 4 Petersburg churches that were burglarized in a series of targeted break-ins. Now, this is Petersburg, Virginia, where 4 churches have been burglarized over recent weeks in what appears to be a targeted pattern of break-ins amid a broader wave of local property crimes. Among the victims is God's Love Ministry on White Street, where thieves ransacked the sanctuary, stole equipment, including a TV and a keyboard amplifier, and desecrated a pastor's robe. Christian Center Church on South Adams Street was broken into twice in April with stolen property, including a lawnmower and donated clothing, and significant property damage was reported. Now, the historic Blandford Church also reported an attempted break-in, prompting concerns over its Tiffany stained glass windows. Now, authorities are investigating the incidents, and church leaders have expressed concern over rising disrespect for sacred spaces. Now, look, again, my weekly reminder that you need a burglar and a fire alarm and a 4K video system. I've got to ask you, why don't you have one yet? It is single-handedly the best security measure any church can take. I don't know what else to tell you. I know one friend is watching this right now, and I'd like to let you know who I'm talking about. Can you please get an alarm for the church? We'd really appreciate it. All right, next up, we're going to go to New Zealand, where somebody smeared poop on Trinity Methodist Church. Now, we have a growing audience in New Zealand. I was recently in New Zealand. I go there every year for the last 10 years. Well, I've been there about 9 times in the last 10 years. I love New Zealand. Honestly, if I could afford it, I'd buy a vacation home there and hang out there every winter. Their summer is our winter. It's a beautiful place to be. I love New Zealand. Great people. I have a lot more followers there, so we're going to do some more stories for our New Zealand people. Now, look, Trinity Methodist Church in New Zealand has suffered a string of disturbing attacks over the past 3 months, including multiple break-ins, vandalism, and attempted arson. These are the same things that we have in America. I'm going to talk about what my trip to church is in New Zealand just a couple of weeks ago here in a minute, but the most recent incident on May 5th involved human feces being smeared across the church entrance and defecated near the doorway, accompanied by used toilet tissue. Now, that same day, a wooden cross was used to smash a window and a fire was lit near the building housing the church's charity shop, The Barn. Authorities confirmed 3 prior burglary reports since February, with investigations ongoing. No items were stolen in the break-in, but property damage and public safety concerns have prompted the church to install alarms and security cameras. Yay! You should have had that from the beginning. All right, now look, this is not the norm for New Zealand, but I got to tell you, when you say New Zealand, you probably would say, when I say what's the safest place in the world, most of you are going to say New Zealand. Look, New Zealanders need to wake up and realize that the same crime happening in America is happening to you. In fact, the largest recent killing of people in a mass shooting in a faith-based facility was in Christchurch, New Zealand, where 50 people were murdered and another 40 were wounded with a shooting. And they have strict gun laws there. That wasn't America that it happened in. It was with you. So New Zealanders need to wake up and realize they have crime. Many of you are commenting in the comments. I love hearing from you that you're trying to make a difference. And I appreciate you. If there's anything I can do to help you, please let me know. All right. Now we're going to move on to Nigeria. Look, Nigeria Christians are being slaughtered by Boko Haram and Al-Qaeda affiliates. Violence against Christians in Nigeria continues to escalate, with 13 people killed in separate attacks over a 2-week span. Now, on April 28, 7 Christians were killed in a predominantly Christian village in Borno State when suspected jihadists linked to Boko Haram in Islamic State West Africa, or ISWAP, raided the area and set homes and church buildings on fire. Now, further violence occurred on May 3rd and 4th in Plateau State, where 6 people, including a 6-month-old child, were killed in attacks on the Christian communities, and I hope I say these words right, Nasarawa Technology Village and Kakaruk. Now, local Christian leaders report that Fulani herdsmen. Now, when we say Fulani herdsmen, it makes it sound like it's just a bunch of locals that, that are angry about whatever. Fulani herdsmen are attached to Al-Qaeda and Boko Haram. I just want to make that clear. So I think we actually, by saying Fulani herdsmen, we devalue how violent and extremist these people are. Now, these Fulani herdsmen and other militant groups are attempting to destroy Christian settlements and establish an Islamic caliphate in central Nigeria. Now, the country ranks number 7 on Open Doors 2025 World Watch List for persecution of Christians. I've seen other information out there where Nigeria is ranked as number 1 as far as persecution of Christians. I don't know what else we can do for the people of Nigeria. I wish we could do more. I'm not going to lie. I wish I can have all my gear on, my Knight's Armament AR, and just drop down into a Nigerian village and protect those people. I would dig that, but unfortunately, I think they would put me in a Nigerian jail, and that would do me no good protecting them. I know a lot of Nigerians are fleeing to America. I've seen a lot of them here in Idaho appearing, and they have been telling me that they're fleeing. And pretty soon, I think there are going to be no Christians left in Nigeria because they're either going to be killed or they're going to flee to a state where they can worship Christ in peace. For those of you fighting the good fight in Nigeria, thank you for all your hard work. You are doing the Lord's work. I thank you. Okay, let me know what you think of the broadcast. Leave a comment down at the bottom. Thank you for making it this far. I want you to pray for the people of Nigeria and and pray for their protection and pray that we can fight back against these Islamic militants that are slaughtering us. I also want to remind you that you need to follow your ABCs. Always be caring.